Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Scoop World Order Spring Ball edition. We've got the spring game is back in full force after they had the spring, whatever it was going to be, the spring spectacular, the spring field day, whatever. Officially back to being the spring game. I think that maybe they weren't selling enough tickets to the spring showcase or whatever they're trying to promote. So now they're going to go back to playing a game, which I think is the right move. I think that the young guys need to get out in front of the crowd at the Horseshoe. I think that the fans need to see some action. I don't care about seeing Caleb Downs or JJ Smith. I want to see these young guys get out and play because we open with Texas. So, I mean, this isn't going to be like, yeah, we get a warm up, then the big game. The first game is the big game. So some of these guys need to get out and throw it around in the shoe a little bit. Looking at you, Julian, saying, and some of these receivers, backs, skill guys need to go out and play in front of a huge crowd, not to mention the linemen. So I think that'll be really good. We're going to talk about all of that along with spring football, kind of stock report, a little bit of recruiting, take your questions as always. Again, if you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. Again, give us a huge, you do a huge favor for us, give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, along with Spotify, completely free, super easy way to help us out. And again, we appreciate you guys so much that have been doing that. And we appreciate all you guys that are on here each and every night. So with that being said, we got a little surprise today. We got our boy Devin from the Buckeye Boys. Make sure you guys subscribe to the Buckeye Boys YouTube channel. Has been growing like crazy. Devin is on here. Mello is usually in the chat. Devin, how have you been? Congratulations on all of your success. And what say you about Ohio State spring football thus far?
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on, dude. It's been a blast being over there on Buckeye Boys and just coming from Scoop, and you know we go after you guys, and we feel like we're connected to you guys. So it's been real fun, man. I'm pumped, man. Spring ball came so fast this year, obviously with the extended playoffs and us win the national title, dude. I remember the wait last year to get to this point. It got a little agonizing, like waiting for things to talk about and whatnot, but spring ball started and we're hearing the normal stuff. So what I'm hearing now, which I don't really pay much attention to, I'm hearing a lot of people talking about the offense struggling, the quarterback struggling, and you know that's just a report that's going around. But let me remind people. I remind myself too. I mean, people were saying the same thing about Will Howard last year. You know, we got a new offensive coordinator. First time quarterbacks back there, so it's going to take a minute, dude. It hasn't been much. What have they had? One scrimmage so far, maybe two, or I'm not even sure, and people were already starting the freak out stuff, which I get it. Passionate fans. I'm passionate as well, but, people said the same stuff about Will Howard, but overall, dude, I'm pumped, man. I'm excited about the coaching changes Ryan Day made. Excited where this program's headed. Excited about the transfer portal pickups, the whole 9 yards, dude. So very excited to see what Matt Patricia does with this offense and to see our new offensive coordinator out there calling plays, man.
Yeah, I think that for people, and obviously not every Ohio State fan is the most well-balanced person because some people love to fly off the fringe every day. But, like when JJ Smith is kind of being held and so is Caleb Downs, the offense will look much different when JJ's at full blast. And plus, you don't really know what you have in your running game in spring ball because you don't tackle the running backs. So, I mean, it's I don't want to say it's one-dimensional, but it's kind of like 75% of practice, you're throwing the ball. Now, can you see what you have in pass protection, pass rush? Yes. Can you see how good the coverage is, how tight the coverage is? Yes. But it's not like you're running a real offense when there's no threat of a running game. In a lot of periods, do they do some inside run and some physical drills? Yes, but you're not tackling to the ground. So it's hard to tell. But I also, like there's going to be growing pains. And I've said that, and I know that we have no patience, and Ohio State fans have less than zero patience, but you're going to have a quarterback making his first career start, if it's Julian Sane, which I fully expect it to be, or Lincoln Kienholz. So again, like Will Howard showed up, he had 40 starts, won a Big 12 championship, and it's been a hot minute since we've had a guy make his first start, and when CJ Stroud made his first start, a lot of people wanted him benched. So, I mean, it's just kind of maybe he could preach to have some patience at some point. I know it'll never happen, but I expect there to be some choppy water, some bumps in the road with Brian Hartline being a first time play caller going against Texas. I mean, that's maybe the second best team in the country or the best team in the country. I mean, I'd imagine us, them, Georgia. Like, it's not a very long list of teams that are vying for the top spot in the country to start the season. So it's going to be tough, and you're going to have to rely on the running game. You've got new tackles that, frankly, have to get better in pass protection from the people I've talked to. And I think that that's something where, when Ryan Day talks about the impact of CJ Hicks and these guys beating our tackles pretty consistently, I think that that's kind of not unexpected, because pass protection, pass blocking in particular, is the hardest thing to get back when you have a layoff of a few months of where you're doing conditioning and you're doing mat drills, and then all of a sudden you have to practice. It's like, the defensive line always has a significant edge, because it's a lot easier to be a pass rusher than it is to be an offensive pass protector, an offensive tackle guard. Frankly, Ethan Onionwa's never seen anything like the guys he's going against in practice, except for when he played Texas when he was at Rice. So there are going to be some hiccups. We've got Ethan, he's not young. Obviously he's a senior this year, but it's a different level when you got to go against Ohio State guys every day. And you have to get used to that mental grind of, and I always talk about this, if you show up to practice and you're half stepping it and you're not locked in, maybe didn't get good sleep, maybe aren't ready to roll, you can get humiliated. I mean, and it's like this, that's the best part about playing at Ohio State, is if you don't treat every single day like a game, then you can get absolutely humiliated on that field. And, these guys got pride, and these guys have been paid a lot of money. And so, guys like Ethan got to keep getting better, and you got to figure out who's going to be your right tackle. If it's going to be Ian Moore, if it's going to be Phillip Daniels. So, I mean, again, it comes down to who are the best pass blockers, which is why a guy like Donnie was so valuable. A guy like Josh Simmons was so valuable. Like, we had tremendous pass protection out of our tackles last year. And that's going to be kind of the story of the season, especially with a quarterback who, frankly, isn't as mobile or as physically imposing the way Will Howard was, when you talk about Julian Sands. So, you've talked a lot, again, something that's very unique about your shows. You've dealt with a lot of parents, a lot of recruits' parents. And again, if you guys haven't seen some of those episodes on Buckeye Boys, they're phenomenal. We talked with Taven St. Clair's father. You've talked with Devin Sanchez's father. What are some of the things that the parents have learned through the spring practice? I mean, obviously they're going through their first spring practice as Ohio State football parents. What are some of the things that they've learned, or they've expected, or maybe didn't expect, as they've been able to attend some practices?
Well, the first thing, with these parents is they leave their kids with Ohio State, and then they show up to meet their kids again. And us fans, we're so excited to see the weight gains and different things like that. And that's really all we can see. But the other side of it is what the parents notice is the change that's happening with their kids there, as far as a leadership standpoint, a maturity standpoint, and stuff like that. And what's being talked about now is the competitive nature that's happening in spring right now. We heard the coaches talk about it. We've heard some nuggets here and there about some fights in spring, and you kind of wondered, what type of identity this team is going to take on. We watched last year with all the leaders that have been around the block a bunch. And then coming in this year, we got some coming back, but we got a lot of new coaches and a lot of new players. So seeing the competitive fire in some of these younger guys is stemming from the opportunity that's been created from all these players going to the NFL. And they see it, man. The new recruits coming in, they see it. The second-year players see it. Everybody sees it. So that level of competitiveness inside the Woody right now, and that's going on in spring practice, is an elite, extremely high level. And that's either going to make you or it's going to break you, man. Coach Walt talked about this in his interview, and it's why I sit back during the spring and I'm real careful about like what I log into my memory and what I care about. Now, what I mean by that is Coach Walt brought up something really good that I think, you know, that man, the really good days or something like that. The hard part is to continue that, is to continue doing that, throughout the entire spring and through the rest of the process. So the competitive nature that's going on in there is elite, man. It's elite, and it's what sets Ohio State aside from a lot of these um, top schools, man. So they're excited about it. I love talking to them and hearing the changes that's going on with their kids after they drop them off physically, emotionally, mentally, the whole 9 yards. These coaches really, really care, not just about the football field, but off the football field as well. And that's why I love Ryan Day, man. That's why he's one of the best coaches in college football. That's why he won a national title. That's why he's going to win more national titles, because the culture that he creates there, that stems into recruiting as well, why Ohio State recruits the way that they do. But I'm excited to see where this team goes. I don't give much weight to some of these updates coming out right now because you heard from the coaches, man. You heard how much rotation is going on. I mean, on defense, they are rotating so many players to see what players can handle what and what players can't handle what. On offense, I mean, you got Ethan Onianwa in there at the guard position to see what he can do. He's here to be a left tackle, but they're just trying to find places, on the team. So I'm looking at individual growth in players, what they look like physically now. And it's really hard to take a lot in. It's kind of like when you watch the spring game, man. How much can you really glean from the spring game? Last year's spring game, Aaron Nolan, Sam William Dixon were probably the best players in the spring game. They didn't play a snap on the field. You know what I'm saying? So it's just it's hard with these spring updates. It's exciting, but I wouldn't take much of it with a lot can change, man. There's still a lot of football to be played, a lot of learning to be done, and a lot of growth to be had. So we're at the very beginning, man.
Yeah, the spring game, I don't think you could ever take anything from it. I mean, I've seen years where Justin Fields had one completion, or I've seen really good players, not play. Obviously, most of the good players don't play at all, and then I've seen guys that you thought might maybe step up because they make some big plays, or like Solomon Thomas, who lives in Columbus now, nice kid. He's got had the interception versus Arkansas. Like, he had like 7 sacks in one spring game, and I think he had maybe 1 sack his entire career, like at Ohio State. But he had like 6 or 7 sacks in one spring game, going against some bad tackles, obviously, and just roasting them. So does that mean that he's going to be the second coming of Derek Thomas? No, it just means that he had a favorable matchup, and you'll see some severe talent differentiations at corner versus wide receiver. And again, not this year because our corners are the deepest I've ever seen. But like sometimes you'd have a walk-on corner out there versus, we had T.Y. Williams one year score like an 80-yard touchdown, and it's like I don't think he ever had a catch in a game. But it's it's fun. I think that the best function of the spring game is to get some of these guys out there, like Devin Sanchez, get Tavian St. Clair out there so they can play in front of live people, because I know that there's always cliches that get tossed out by coaches where they talk about the fact that, well, the practice needs to be harder than the game, and the practice is going to be, if you don't practice good, you can't play good in the game. And I'm like, well, like, the practice can never be as hard as a game, because when you're playing like in a national championship or a Super Bowl or versus Texas in the Final Four of the playoffs, like there's no practice that could emulate that kind of pressure. Now you could try to, I mean, Urban Meyer and Ryan Day, these guys, they try to create and foster an environment of that type of pressure. But when you don't have the world watching and kind of your coaching life on the line, it's just different. Like, 'cause I used to always say, like, if I have a bad practice, I know it, and it sucks, and it's depressing, and you got to get yourself off the mat, and if you get dog walked a few times or you have that bad player, you give up a sack or whatever, you got to get that out of your head. But if you do that in a game where the world's watching, it can define your life. I mean, like, again, I played with Ryan Hamby. Ryan Hamby dropped the pass versus Texas. We could have won the game. And that's kind of what he's known for. Like, if you ask an average Ohio State fan, what do you think of when you hear the name Ryan Hamby? They think of him dropping pass. Again, that's not fair, but that's just reality. And that's what I was telling guys. I'm like, look, at Ohio State, man, you'll be known for your biggest play either way, either your biggest moment or your biggest game or your worst game, if it's something that's a catastrophe. But that's just life in the big city. So I like the kids getting out there, man, because I know they're going to have anxiety. I know they're going to have butterflies. Some are going to be terrified running out of the tunnel in front of 80,000 people or whatever is at the Horseshoe that day. But I think it's good to get that out of your system before we open and play Texas, because we open with the Texas Longhorns in the game of the season, the game of the century for this season. That's going to be obviously college game day, big noon kickoff, everything. And so you don't get a dress rehearsal to get warmed up. Like, you're going to be playing a real one to open it up. So I think Ryan Day is really, really shrewd, turning this thing back into a spring game and saying, let's get some of these young guys out there. And honestly, we got to get Julian Saint out there. Like, he's got to go throw some in the shoe too, because he's we've got the anointing oil out. He got to go throw some balls out there and complete them and get his confidence up. And I'm real big on confidence, like easy throws, flare passes, little stuff to the tight end over the middle. Like, it doesn't always have to be like a 9er out, like a deep ball down the chute, and because those are hard to hit. Like, especially when you're playing against Davison or Jermaine Matthews. I mean, they could not go complete. You could be a pick. So get some easy throws going early to get his confidence up. Get the ball out quick to help your tackles out, help the O-line out. I think that's important. And honestly, like, Brian Hartline needs to go call some plays in the shoe, and so does Matt Patricia. Now Matt Patricia's got Super Bowl play calling experience, but Brian Hartline's never called a play in his life. So how does he operate? I imagine he'll be up in the box, but he needs to get used to that, work through it. With the crowd, the noise, the stress. I mean, it's like I said, practice is great, but man, when you play in a game and that, hey, if I, when you're that offensive tackle and you're playing in a real game, and if you get beat, your quarterback could be, put in the infirmary, he could get broken in half and hurt and sack, fumble, and all the terrible things that run through your mind. Like, it's just different. And those kids, they need to feel that pressure. Ethan Oniano needs to feel that pressure. Philip Daniels needs to feel that pressure, because it's different in the Horseshoe now. I mean, you got to remember, our fans, they've got long memories and they've got sharp teeth. So it's always fun, if you have one of those games that isn't a banger. Devin, what are you most excited to hear about for the next, we got about, 10 days left in spring. What are some things you'd like to hear over the next 10 days?
Well, actually, this will kind of stem in another update I wanted to hit on. One of the most exciting updates I got from somebody that was at the scrimmage and somebody that has played the defensive end position at the highest level was also what I'm most excited to see, and was also my biggest concern of this team. I've heard you guys talk about it before, and that's our defensive line, man, our defensive ends. Losing Jack and JT, losing our tackles that we lost, different things like that. And you look at the depth chart, you ask yourself, where do we go from here? You know what I mean? As a team. And what I was told, and I know I just got done preaching, take things with a grain of salt because it's the beginning, but I was told specifically there's 2 defensive ends that are going to cause some serious issues in the Texas game. And that is Kenyatta Jackson and CJ Hicks. Now, when I hear updates from CJ Hicks, I've been hearing this for a couple years now about the impact that he can make. So I love what I'm hearing, the position change. I'm loving what the updates that I'm hearing. But I'm excited about Kenyatta Jackson. He is just fit for the position. He's built for the position. He got a lot of attention during the pro day when he was out there doing these drills with Jack and JT. Supposedly, a lot of these NFL guys were looking at Kenyatta Jackson and saying, like, hey, who's that dude, man? Because he's just built. He's got the perfect build for the position. So I'm excited to see where that, ends up and who ends up being one of our starting, the starting defensive ends. I got Kenyatta Jackson in there, and I've always picked Caden Curry. But we'll see what CJ Hicks can do, man. See what kind of moves he can make. But honestly, man, the number one thing comes down to quarterback. But you know, you hear the reports coming out now. I just heard somebody talking today about that said Lincoln Keenholz he's out of it. And then I heard that Sayan was really struggling. But then again, you're hearing these reports, and you don't know where it's coming from, and you don't know what they mean by struggling. But again, it's like, dude, we heard Will Howard was horrible, can't throw the deep ball, was really struggling, not accurate. Devin Brown's going to win the starting quarterback position. But I've never been a college football player, so I don't know how the practices go this time of year. But the question I would have is, how much can you really glean from a quarterback in this time? I'm not sure it's worth getting excited to see what the quarterbacks can do, because I'm not sure how much they can do at this time in their training and their development, because of what's going on inside the Woody. These coaches are moving so many people around, trying new things. I don't even know everything they're doing, but I would imagine it's a hard time to get a real good gauge on what we have at quarterback. You can probably answer that question better than anybody in the country. And that's like, can you even glean much from our quarterbacks at this point in time in the season? And if you can, what can you glean from them? Leadership, or, you can't glean presence on the field. There's no games going on. You know what I mean? So, I don't know if you can touch on that, but I am very curious about that. Like, what you can learn from our quarterbacks at this time of year in the season.
I think you can learn a lot about their mentality, their leadership, how easily are they rattled, because there's some quarterbacks that are babies, and they complain if they're with the bad offensive line and they get pressured and they're not going with JJ and Ennis and Tate, and the tackle got beat or whatever. And so, I've heard quarterbacks that like complain about the offensive line, or, I was with the 2s and the 3s. And, like last year, Will Howard was going with the 3 some. I mean, Ryan Day was rolling all the quarterbacks through. Devin was getting shots. Julian Sain as a freshman was getting shots. I don't think Eric got any shots with the 1s, but I mean, Julian did. So, I mean, you're rolling guys through, because sometimes, like, you want to see if guys can make chicken salad out of chicken, poop. I'm not gonna say the words, so we don't swear, but it's just like, that's honestly, I think that as much as some people might think that that's a waste of a rep to have Will Howard or Julian saying go with the 2s or whatever, or the 3s, I think that sometimes it's healthy to see, well, what does he do when he doesn't have the top end talent, or he's got to rally a bunch of guys? He has to rally the guys that are, the AYOs, the freshmen, the young guys. Can he galvanize those guys, make those guys play hard? Can he move the ball with them? Like, something that Troy Smith was really good about it. I talked to David Patterson about this, like, back when we were on the same team together. Dave was a captain and a fantastic player at Ohio State, and he thought Troy was better than Justin Zwick, because, Troy could move the ball with the second team versus the first team. Like, we would do these scrimmages where it was called a rehearsal scrimmage, where, you put all of the kind of the scrubs on one team, and then you put the first team on the other team, and you scrimmage. So, I mean, like, in 2003, like, I mean, like, they put the AYOs, like like me, like the backup tackle and stuff, versus like the first team defense, which is Will Smith, Tim Anderson, Darian Scott, AJ Hawk was starting middle linebacker, Chris Gamble, like all those guys. So, I mean, because Jim Tressel always wanted to do that to see, okay, are there guys that can help us this year? Like, let's put them against our best guys. Because, if you can block Will Smith, you can block anybody. If you can block Tim Anderson and some of those guys, you can block anybody. And Troy, because he could scramble, because again, we were paper mache as an offensive line, terrible, especially versus like Will and Darian Scott. But the ability to run and move your feet was something that set Troy apart. And again, he could scramble around and make stuff happen and wreak havoc. And that's something why, like, I love mobile quarterbacks, because I've seen the advantage. Like, you look at Will Howard last year, again, one of the greatest plays that people don't really talk about enough is that, we're playing at Penn State, and Abdul Carter, who I think is the best player in the country last year, he has him dead to rights, and Will's able to shake away from him and scramble and throw the ball to Jelani, and Jelani caught it like 5 times and got a first down. But it's like, that little bit of ability to get out on the edge is helpful. So I think that you can glean a lot about the mental of a quarterback, really. And honestly, this goes for every position. Because the thing about playing at Ohio State or somewhere that's a significant place, the NFL, where you're not the big dog, where people are as good as you, is you have to be tough mentally. Because you're going to have those days, you're going to have those plays, you're going to have those days where, no matter if Denzel Burke, I mean, he can get torched by J.J. Smith. Happened last year when he's a freshman. People said Denzel was trash, and it turns out JJ's probably going to end up being the best college receiver ever. But you're going to have days where it's not going to go great. And there's some guys that can't ever recover from it. And then there's some guys that can, dust it off, and they're eager to get back out there to try to prove themselves. So again, I think it's important, with quarterbacks, but it's like this with every position. And again, especially with these young kids, these freshmen, these transfers that, how fast can they learn the playbook? How fast can they fix mental errors? Because again, a lot of these guys are learning the playbook for the first time. And it's not easy. It's hard because, every day they add, 4 or 5 new concepts that have to stack on top of the ones from yesterday that were installed. So it's not like they put in like a few plays a week. It's like, no, they put in a few new plays every day, and you have to know your responsibilities versus every coverage, every front, every blitz. And it can be overwhelming. And again, you'll figure out real quick what kids want to study the playbook and be great, and what kids just kind of want to slump through it. Because again, the most important part to, when you're an early entry, is making sure you know the book. Because if you know the playbook, then you have a chance to play fast and react. And until you know the playbook, man, you're reactionary, a step slow, and it's difficult. But for these quarterbacks, like I like seeing them go through adversity. I like seeing them throw interceptions. I like seeing them, maybe miss a throw. Because I want to see if they go in the tank or not. Because if they're going to go in the tank in a practice, then you have no chance to beat Texas with these guys. But I don't think that a guy like Julian Sain has gotten to be a 5-star #1 quarterback in his class by doing that. Because he played big time football in California, played against good teams, and you have to be tough mentally, especially in the world that we live in now of YouTube and TikTok and Twitter, and there's no hiding. If you have a bad game, the world is going to be on you, and they're going to attack you. And you got to be ready for it, man. I mean, again, I always talk about, like, you think about the run that Ohio State went on and the way the atmosphere was after the Michigan game, where people wanted Ryan Day fired. They wanted Chip Kelly fired. They wanted Will Howard sent to prison. I mean, they wanted everything cleaned and gone and whitewashed the whole program. And, if those guys, if guys like Ryan Day and Chip Kelly and Will Howard weren't tough mentally, then they could have just rolled over and died, but instead they decided to, grit their teeth and go get it. And then they ended up having the best season in Ohio State history. So, again, that's part of being at Ohio State. And again, I always say this about our fan base. Our fan base, they eat the players alive. They eat the coaches alive. But if you win the big ring, there's no greater beloved, revered, whatever. So again, I like that. Like, and that ain't forever. Some guys are sensitive and soft, but like, I was fine with it. Like, again, and this comes from a guy that I lost national championships, and I got the brunt of it all, the full force of losing the things, and it sucks. But that's the price you pay when you play at a place like Ohio State. Is if you lose them, they're gonna let you know about it probably forever. But if you win them, you're at the top of the food chain for a long time. So again, I'm good with it. Like, I love it. I don't want our fan base to ever change, and I hope that they keep the expectations that high, because to me, that's what makes Ohio State the best place in the country, is our fan base. Is because the people that support Ohio State, they're not into second place, they're not into moral victories, they're not into, well, golly gee whiz, we won the Rose Bowl and we won the Cotton Bowl, but we didn't beat Notre Dame in the championships. Like, no, you got to win the championship, you got to win the big ring, and then it's all love. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I did want to hit on something else real fast that I've been hearing coming out of the Woody in regards to, what's going on in the spring and all this stuff, man. And it's something that, Ryan Day went out and he hired Matt Patricia, man. Right. And the first thing you hear is, oh my gosh, is he going to be a culture fit? Watch out, man. Players in the NFL didn't like him. We heard this, we heard that. Watch out. And then this dude comes in, man, and you start hearing from people how good he is, how relatable he is, how good of a teacher he is. And you hear it the first couple of times and you almost brush it to the side and say, well, I mean, he's getting here. Maybe he's just, putting on an act because he just got here, wants to get in people's good graces, whatever you might want to think. Then you hear the players' interviews and you hear them talking about, all that as well, about how refreshing it is to have a defensive coordinator in here that cares for the players and takes the time to go talk to them. And that is nothing to do with Jim Knowles. I'm just telling you what the player said. And it just goes against everything that, of course, all the fan base, even some Ohio State fans, wanted to say, oh my gosh, Matt Patricia, watch out. He's not going to treat these guys right. He's not going to be a culture fit, the whole 9 yards. And in fact, I know he is, because of updates I'm getting, not from watching YouTube videos or chats, updates I'm getting from people that talk to the players. And they love Matt Patricia, man, as who he is as a person and how good he is to teach. And not only that, dude, but this hire is making waves across recruiting. Recruits took notice when Matt Patricia was hired here at Ohio State. I remember watching your show when Matt Patricia was hired, and you brought that up, man. You said this is going to be great for recruiting as well, man, because when these recruits see a two-time Super Bowl, and I know he was there for 3, but he was only coaching really for 2 of them, a 2-time NFL Super Bowl champ defensive coordinator, they're going to want a piece of that. Well, when you add in how good he is as a teacher, how relatable he is, and how much I now officially believe he really cares about these players in there, I'm excited, dude. I'm excited to see this defense. We know that we had the best defense last year, and I know that we lost a lot of leaders, and it's safe to assume we're going to not be as good, because where do you go from number 1? But the more I hear and the more I see, I'm just getting really, really excited. And I think this defense has the opportunity to be in the same realm as last year's defense, especially with Matt Patricia leading the way and coming in and carrying the way that he is carrying. So on the field, off the field, in recruiting, I mean, Ryan Day just hit this hire out of the park, but that's what I wanted to hit on with kind of what's going on in the spring. I was kind of interested to see, how these new coaches, how they would fit in to the culture at Ohio State. And so far it's been absolutely knocked out of the park. And I am very, very excited to see what Matt Patricia does with some of these players like Arvell Reese, CJ Hicks, Sonny Styles. I mean, Arvell Reese, people are just, they are talking him up right now, and rightfully so. I mean, he is just an absolute unit, dude. And I'm just excited to see the secondary this year is going to be absolutely ridiculous. Our safeties, our corners, and then the linebacker position. In recruiting today, we just had Storm Miller, a linebacker out of Ohio that people thought the Buckeyes were going to get. Well, he just signed with Texas A&M, like out of nowhere. Nobody saw this coming or anything. And I'm here to tell you, chill out, relax, dude. We got James Laurinaitis. Look what he did last year. Riley Pettijohn, Tarvos Alford, and Eli Lee. A 5-star, a borderline 5-star, and a homegrown linebacker. I'm very confident with that. But that's just a little side note there. But I'm excited, man. Overall, I'm excited. It's the beginning of spring ball here. We're still in the beginning stages of it. Not too much to take from it, like we keep saying, but I think this team has some serious potential this year. Not only this year, but traject out like 2 or 3 years with the pace that Ryan Day is going. People keep mentioning a Saban-like run. College football has changed now. It's going to be a lot harder to do that than it was when Saban did it. But we'll see, man. I'm pumped, dude. I'm glad to be a Buckeye, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I think that the Storm Miller thing, I don't care. We have TJ Alford and we've got Riley Pettijohn. Again, with recruiting, recruiting's never been more worthless than it is right now because 45% of these kids are gonna hit the portal anyway. So it's like people get all bent out of shape about a kid going somewhere, and in a year they'll be back in the portal because they'll show up and they won't be a culture fit, or they won't be any good, or they'll stink, or the coach will get fired, or the coach will go elsewhere, you'll get a better job. So I don't know. Like I wish I cared about recruiting. I just don't anymore. I mean, it's like I know that our top tier guys will be elite, and then those mid tier guys, you know, they're either going to show up here and they're going to make a move and become part of the trajectory of the program, or they're going to be pushed to the portal. Period. So I mean, that's the thing about like recruiting now is like, you know, if we miss out on somebody, I'm like, well, you know, like we got Max Clare out of the portal, we got Ethan Oniano out of the portal. We got, you know, it's like we got Julian Sayin out of the portal. I mean, you look at our team and it's like, you know, how many of our best players are portal guys? I mean, it's going to be a higher and higher number. Plus we keep guys out of the portal. We kept Jermaine Matthews out of the portal by giving him a bag, and Davison. But no, I think Matt Patricia is a guy, you know, he didn't really have to have like a little bit of rehab, but it's always interesting to me when people, they look at, they're kind of like the lowest point of their career, or because I heard so much stuff about the Detroit Lions tenure for Matt Patricia. And again, obviously Dan Campbell has done an incredible job, but Detroit hasn't been good ever. Yes, so him going there and not having a great roster. Obviously, he had Stafford, who's a Hall of Fame quarterback, but they've just never been good. You know, so it's hard. So you know, it's like if you're the coach of the Browns. Like the Browns have never been good. I mean, they've been above average, but they've never been like a team where you're like, oh my God, look at this dynasty or this dominating team. So I don't know. But the thing that told me everything is the second that he got let go from Detroit, Bill Belichick hired him immediately to come back to New England. And he had him coach the offensive line, had him coach the offensive, he's the offensive coordinator the one year that Mac Jones was actually pretty good. You know, so I mean, that told me a lot because this guy, he's a legitimate genius. He legitimately is. I mean, his major was he's a rocket scientist, a legitimate rocket scientist. So I mean, again, does that mean that you could take your local scientist and turn him into a great football coach? I don't know, but I think that when a guy has that kind of computation skills and the ability and that kind of brain power, do I think that he could decipher some stuff on film, pick up things, design some schemes that maybe could confuse and put a lot of people in conflict at once? Yeah, I think that's what's exciting about it. Again, like I couldn't imagine a tougher job in the National Football League than being Bill Belichick's defensive coordinator, because like you're literally working for the greatest defensive mind of all time, and you have to show up every, you know, Monday and present your plan to him and say, okay, this is what I think we're going to do on defense. And you're like, it's like I mean, he's like Yoda. I mean, like, okay, so this is, so it has to be up to to Bill Belichick's standard. You have to do that every week. And Bill Belichick is notoriously the toughest coach in football history to work for. I mean, even Nick Saban, who is, you know, merciless against his assistants, said the hardest he ever worked in his entire life was for Bill Belichick in Cleveland, in terms of the hours, the demands, the stress, the everything. And Matt Patricia dealt with that for 20 years. So, I mean, walking into the Woody Hayes is probably like you're drinking a cup of coffee. I mean, just like you get your Starbucks and go for a little drive. Because, I mean, but again, I like that because, again, I think that him having that work ethic and how they've done it in New England, where it's been incredibly successful, something that can, you know, blend into what they do in the Woody Hayes. I mean, he's obviously not going to change the culture of the Woody Hayes because it's already as high as you can get, but he can also tweak things and teach Ryan things. And something that I was really big on for Ryan, because again, at the end of the day, like people can poo-poo the Patricia hire all they want, but I'm like, Ryan Day is a really, really sharp coach, and he's the guy that did the interview, and he's the guy that won the national championship, and he's the guy that's the College Football Hall of Famer as of today. So if he signs off on it, then I'm good with it. You know, as much as people want to say whatever, I'm like, dude, Ryan Day, who's an offensive genius, really liked this guy, and I'm good because I think that when you hire a Matt Patricia, it makes everybody in the building better, not just your defensive staff. It makes your offensive staff better too, because Brian Hartline's got to go against him in scrimmages now, and that's not going to be fun. So it'll make James Laurinaitis better. It'll make Matt Gary better. You know, Tim Walton is excellent already, but I mean, he can continue to grow, and so can everybody else on this stuff. Because again, when you have a guy who was an NFL head coach and worked for the Patriots for 20 years when they had the greatest dynasty in NFL history. I think there's no downside to there. Because again, the flip of it was, when there was the thought of promoting Tim Walton and Matt Guerrieri being the co-DCs, like I was just like, that would be great. But I was like, if you go get like a dog, like a guy who's a dog, like Matt Patricia, who's won Super Bowls and experiences. And I always like when you can bring in these big time, these guys that have come from really successful places that they got a lot of experience. They've got a lot of really good intel on how to do things. I always think that that's the way to go, because you're going to bring in a guy who's got different ideas and different thoughts. Because, if you promote Tim Walton, which again, this is nothing against Tim Walton, I think he's fantastic, but you're not going to get a fresh influx of ideas. Because I'm not worried about the back end. I think that the back end is going to be the Tim Walton and Matt Guerrieri show. It's going to look a lot like last year. I'm worried about the front end, the front six, and how are we going to kind of make up for the not lack of talent, but I don't think that our defensive line is anywhere near as talented as it was last year. There's a lot of ability. Magic Houston could be as good as anybody in that group, and so could Caden McDonald. But I think that Matt Patricia's ability to confuse and put offensive pass protections in conflict is going to be something I'm looking forward to seeing, because we're going to have to gin it up a little bit, because our edge guys are not going to be as good as Jack and JT. And again, I like Caden McDonald, like CJ Hicks, or not Caden McDonald, excuse me, Caden Curry, and I like Kenyatta Jackson. But I mean, Jack and JT were fantastic players. They're guys that never got the due that they deserved. But I think that with Matt Patricia's scheme, from what he's doing, where he's widening these ends out, letting them really get up the field and get after it, I think it's going to be really fun to watch. Devin, any thoughts so we can get into a couple super chats?
No, we get it. The only thing I wanted to mention is, I hear and I understand the thought of Jack and JT or Kenyatta and Curry, and anybody other replacing those two aren't going to be as good. To me, I think they're just going to look different. I think it's going to be way different, and it'll, come to find out whether, hey, can we stop the run or can we not stop the run? I just have one more quick question for you before we jump into the super chats, man. I'm just curious, somebody that's been in spring and whatnot. We're talking about the players right now and the experience that they get during this spring ball. How much experience can Brian Hartline get right now from calling plays? Now, I'll phrase it this way. Can you judge Brian Hartline right now by the play calling in a scrimmage? Can somebody sit back and watch him call plays and say, wow, he's not doing good calling plays in this spring scrimmage, or wow, he really is doing good? Are we even there yet?
I don't think you can, you can't panic, but again, Ryan Day is going to do a lot of situations in the spring where you call it. They have these periods in practice where it's called call it, as in you call the play, like, it's the offense versus the defense. We're going to move the field. It's kind of like a scrimmage setting, but Brian Hartline has to call plays on the fly versus Matt Patricia's defense is on the fly, and just see where we're at, because again, it's all different because we open with Texas. Like, I mean, if we open with, the old school, Youngstown State and, Florida A&M or Grambling or whatever, I mean, that's a whole different ballpark. But when you open with Texas, man, you've got to get some scrimmage time in. You got to get Brian comfortable calling the plays, man. He's never called a play outside of on Madden, and so you're going to be calling it against the world, and Texas is going to have a plan for you. And obviously, Brian knows that. I mean, Brian's and he's going to have help from Ryan and everybody else, but it's all on him now, man. I mean, we lost one of the greatest play callers of all time in Chip Kelly to Brian. And like I said, this is it's a big moment for him, but he's got the best talent in the country. So he's got to work to get these guys rolling, but I think he's you can learn some stuff and make some mistakes. And honestly, like, spring's a great time to make mistakes because you can learn from them. And also it doesn't hurt you. You can't get a loss in spring or in the spring game or in spring ball. But, if I was Ryan, I'd want to go up to the stadium a few times. And like, we used to go to the stadium for our scrimmages every week. Every weekend we'd go over to the stadium and we'd play in the shoe, in front of an empty crowd just to get the, kind of get the nerves going a little bit. We used to practice at the Horseshoe a lot too, just because it's just different. You're in that big building and you just want to get used to being out there. And, when they put people out there and it's on TV, obviously it's different. But, I'd want if I was Ryan, I'd want to get Brian up in the box a little bit, and I'd want him to be on the headset and communicating down with Keenan Bailey and Carlos Lachlan, and I'd want to move the field a little bit to get those rotations going, because I imagine Keenan Bailey is going to be helping control the receiver rotation, since he'll be down, and I'm sure that Brian will be up, and see who else is up in the box, because I mean Keenan was up last year. You got to figure all this stuff out, you know. I mean Tyler Bowen has three. I mean, there's three line coaches now, so one of those guys will go up. Tyler Bowen will be down, obviously, on the field, but I think you got to get used to that stuff. But again, that's the biggest thing about going against Matt Patricia. Matt Patricia is, again, he's gone against guys in the Super Bowl, the biggest moments, the most clutch moments, and he's had great success. So I think it's going to be something that'll be very interesting to see how that continues to move along. And you know, Ryan's got to get those guys over there and get Brian as comfortable as he can get them. Because again, there's nothing like the real thing, but you got to make it as close as possible going forward. All right, let's dig into some super chats. That was a great question. Oh, it's huge. I'll get this thing fixed. D Sunny, thank you for the 5. Do players with world-class speed like Ted Ginn play at full speed, or do you think that they only use it like a turbo button? Devin, I'll let you go first. What do you think about that?
I mean, you know, I don't have the experience of ever playing, but if you're playing somewhere like Ohio State, my guess is, you know, and there's different routes, different plays, there's timing in football and all that. So I'm sure there's moments where you're not supposed to all out sprint. You're not supposed to do that, but I don't think there's ever a moment where they're deciding whether to run as fast as they can or not. I think if you play football and you're a competitor and you're at one of these schools like Ohio State, you want to go to the NFL, every play matters. So if you have the opportunity to show off your speed, you're showing your speed off, man. That's just my thoughts. You can obviously answer this question way better than I can.
Yeah. Again, D Sunny, thanks for the 5. Says, do players with world-class speed like Ted Ginn play at full speed, or just do they use it like a turbo button? I think it just depends. I mean, I used to see Teddy open it up in practice a little bit. Like we'd run reverses, and you know, when you run certain plays, like you have to hit them at full speed. You can't, you know, when you're running routes, if you're running a go route, like you got to open it up. You can't just jog it. And when you run reverses, I remember there was one of the greatest plays I ever saw was we ran a reverse, and you know, it was on the we ran it obviously to the wide side of the field. I think we were on the right hash. We ran it all the way back to the left. And I remember Ted opened it up. I mean, he was going as fast as he could. And AJ Hawk got an angle on him. And we watched it on film. And AJ actually like tracked Teddy down. Because, you know, this is when AJ ran like AJ's like a 4.38 guy at his pro day. But we watched that play like 50 times in a row. I could literally still picture it. I wish I had the clip. But it was like, I was like, that's what we do. AJ was like something else, because like we ran the Z around left with Teddy, and Teddy was not jogging. He was full steam ahead. But you know, Teddy's a guy that we always knew, and Gonzo, who's like one of my best friends, Anthony Gonzalez, like he'd always talk about how, you know, Ted's 40 was obviously, it was fast, but like his real speed was like from 20 to 60. You know, if there was a 60-yard dash, he'd be like the fastest player ever. But, you know, because at 40, he was just starting to get into like 6th gear. He's really starting to get cranking, because again, with the hurdles and what he did, his real speed went from like 20 to 60. So again, when you see those super long runs, like, and you see him pulling away from guys, it was like that 20 to 60 where he would really torch guys. But yeah, I think that honestly, I think it depends on the time of year. I think it depends upon, you know, how's the body feeling. But, you know, in general, like when I play with guys like Ted and Santonio, those guys ran, you know, because that's how you run. I mean, like, not to be stupid, but like the only way you can run fast is to run fast. You can't, you know, skip around or jog it. And, you know, and you want to make sure that you have that gear ready to go when you need it. And, you know, you remember, like, when you're Teddy, like, I mean, how many times in practice are you sprinting at full speed? Not a ton. So the times where you need it, you better make sure that you got it. So, again, that's a long-winded answer, but I appreciate you, my dude. Jim Jackson, thank you for the 10. What's up, brother? Hope you're doing great. All right, Burke, who do you, I think, will be the next big recruit? I think that that's a little mixed up. Who do I think will be the next big recruit to jump in the boat, and how do you feel about Buckeye recruiting moving forward? I see you, Dev. Hashtag my guy Scoop fam. Devin, I'll let you go next on this one. Who do you think is the next Buckeye to jump in the boat?
Well, let me first preface this by saying that we just got a very good reminder that the age of crystal balls and knowing when recruits are going to jump in and all that, they're just dead, man. I mean, Blaine Bradford out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 5-star safety, just committed to the Buckeyes randomly. And there is not one person on this earth besides anybody inside the Woody, maybe, that had any idea this was happening. So, I mean, if I go by feeling, I mean, offensive line has a lot of momentum right now. So it wouldn't surprise me if a Micah Smith jumped in there or a Drew Evers, I believe that's his name, out of Texas. Or you got players like Braylon Womack, who are very high on the Buckeyes. Faber Keys, another one I got my eye on, man. I think he's going to end up being a Buckeye. They keep talking about he's going to move his, you know, commitment to a certain back in time. But you see what the Buckeyes are doing this year, man. If you're a recruit and you think and you know the Buckeyes are the place, I'd get your spot now, man. Defending national champs, the best program since 2000. Matt Patricia's the defensive coordinator. Ryan Day's the head coach. Jeremiah Smith, Caleb Downs, the two best players in college football were on the team. And the future is very, very bright for Ohio State. So we'll see, man. But I think we got some serious momentum now moving forward. You got players like Caden Dixon-Wyatt, very high on the Buckeyes right now. Big-time receiver, plays with Chris Henry Jr., Chris Henry Jr. shut his recruitment down. So Buckeyes have about as much momentum as you could have in recruiting right now. But in today's day and age, to try to guess who the next commit's going to be, you're kind of throwing a dart in the wind, man. I mean, I talk to these recruits, I talk to their parents, and I know what they tell me. And sometimes even that isn't enough to put in a crystal ball or a good guess or anything like that. But you know, offensive line has a lot of momentum, and that's filling up. So if anybody thinks about it, they're going to want to pull the trigger there. Safety spot just got a 5-star. So if you're a safety wanting in, those are the areas I'm looking at to see like the next commit, because that's where the momentum is. So appreciate you, Jim.
Yeah, I'd love to get Caden Dixon-Wyatt. That'd be a really good one. Yeah, it's I don't know. Like I said, I do follow recruiting. I mean, I know Tyler Atkinson's coming up here, but you know, with some of the demands that are made and some of the NIL stuff, I mean, it's a little hairy sometimes when kids kind of know where the right place is, but you know, are they going to the right place, or are they going to the place where they offer them the most money? Because a lot of times it's not the same thing. So I think that Caden Dixon-Wyatt sounds like a good one. I don't know if he's not gonna go this quick, but loves Ohio State. And again, these guys that you know, some of these guys are just crazy when they go elsewhere. Like these guys that like go to Oregon or whatever. And I'm just like, why would you ever not come to Ohio State, especially if you're a receiver? You know, I mean, he'd be he's a stud. Caden Dixon-Wyatt's a stud, loves Ohio State. South Florida Express kid, you know, so the intel on that is pretty good. Obviously, with what JJ's done, I mean, JJ's kind of founded his own 7-on-7 team now, which is interesting. His brother plays on it, but yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, for me, it'll be interesting if we get some more love at the spring game. But like you said, I mean, there's only so many spots, especially with the roster being down to 105. So if you want to jump in the boat, man, you better jump in the boat, because I'm telling you, there are only so many spots. And again, I remember like when I got offered, I committed instantly because I hated recruiting, and I didn't want to go on official visits. I don't like being fake. I don't want to go fake being interested in a bunch of schools that I don't really want to go to. So when Ohio State offered, I was like, I'm done, committed. I don't want to go anywhere else. I don't want to see anywhere else. I don't want to lose my spot. You know, because like the dumbest thing you could do is, you know, play around and then all of a sudden they lose their spot. You know, I mean, like there's, you know, we only got room for about one or maybe one more receiver. So I mean, some of these guys that want to play around, I mean, you might get left at the altar by someone that snakes you. So that's kind of
Yeah.
what it is.
I did want to hit on something real fast on
Mhm.
the recruiting thing. Like when we interviewed Braylon Womack, his dad said something. He compared recruiting to an engagement, committing to an engagement, and you're seeing that more now. When I'll use Chris Henry as an example. He committed a long time ago, and then he just makes an announcement that he's shutting down his recruitment. So I would argue that he just recently actually committed to the Buckeyes, kind of like a marriage, man. You gotta, you know what I mean? You're engaged. You're not going to go out and date other girls to make sure who you're engaged with is the correct one. That's the way I always took being committed as meaning. In today's day and age, that first commitment is nothing. Now you have to tweet out that you're locked in to actually be committed. So to answer a question, who's going to commit next? Well, shoot, man, we got to wait and see where they commit first, and then where they lock in, and then where they sign. So we got like 3 things to go through now, man. So it's wild, bro. The recruiting industry. You see what On3 has to do to get clicks now. But anyway, that's enough of that.
Yeah, I think it's like buying a girl a promise ring in middle school or high school or something. Like it's not, I mean, she better be like a 10 out of 10 smoke show, and dad better be like an oil baron or something for you to like really be locked in. So that's kind of what Ohio State is, because otherwise it's like, you're gonna be. I mean, like I said, like a lot of these kids, they're as faithful as their options, the same as the coaches. They're as faithful as their options. So, when Chris Henry's getting offered a fortune from Oregon, and USC wants them, and all these guys, like they're all going to look around, and because again, this isn't Chris Henry, this is just a general statement, but like I think a lot of these guys, they show up to campus and they've already got a foot out the door in case it doesn't go right. I mean, I think that the transfer portal culture is real, and I think that some of these kids, especially quarterbacks, when I see them take 30 visits and they go to Purdue and South Carolina and some of these like crap schools, like all of a sudden in a year or two, it might not be working out for you, and that coach that you gave the time of day to at Purdue might be at Florida State, or might be at Florida, or might be at wherever, or so it's like I think that these guys are always trying to keep as many fires in the iron as possible, in case it goes wrong. Because I mean, how many times have you seen these kids? They show up and they're here for a year, and I'm buried on the depth chart. Coach doesn't like me, or my coach left and went to the NFL or got fired or whatever, and then they end up at their number 2 school and they go get another bag of money. So I don't know. I've just seen this movie too many times.
Yeah.
But the engagement thing is very funny though. All right, Mellow 7. Did you see? Oh, that's great. Thanks for the 10. Appreciate you, Mellow. The other half of the Buckeye Boys. Appreciate you, brother. Did you see SFE's Twitter post? Pick up Brad Hartline smoking a cigar. I want Tyler Atkinson so bad. Devin OH.
Yo.
I mean, that would obviously be for Caden Dixon Wyatt, which I think would be a fantastic get, but we'll see. I mean, again, the spring game's coming up, and those guys will be coming up here, I'm sure, and they usually camp up here, so we'll see. Tyler Atkinson is the number 1 guy on our board right now, but he is not going to be cheap. So I mean, we got to figure out what's the right number for a freshman linebacker who could move into an edge. Your thoughts, Devin, on South Florida Express Twitter with a photo of Brad Hartline smoking a cigar, and also how bad do you want Tyler Atkinson?
Well, dude, that SFE pipeline to Ohio State is the real deal, man. I would love to hear the story behind that one day. You know what I mean? How that sparked up and how that started. Obviously, Brian Hartline is an elite coach, so it totally makes sense. Hey, man, you know what I mean? 7-on-7 receivers and corners, are the stars of the show. So it makes sense in that regard. But there's obviously some background there between them. So yeah, the Chris Henry Jr. locking it in after Caden Dixon Wyatt just gets off an official visit. Then SFE makes that post. I mean, Caden Dixon Wyatt has been in contact with Ohio State for a long time now. I broke film down on him over a year ago. So excited there. And Storm Miller's off the board now, speaking of linebackers, and Tyler Atkinson, but we still got Sincere Johnson out of the state of Ohio. Alabama's in on him hard, but I still like our chances. We got CJ Sauna. I think he's going to end up in the class. So I can foresee those two signing and then us just throwing everything we got at Tyler Atkinson because he's a Devin Sanchez, JJ Smith-ish type of recruit. It's hard to really compare anybody to JJ Smith, even Devin Sanchez. But he's that type of recruit, man, where when he shows up, you're going to hear what you're hearing about Devin Sanchez right now. And that's, he's the JJ Smith of the defense. I mean, Tyler Atkinson is just, years ahead of the average high school development, physically just an absolute dog. And James Laurinaitis, man, doing his thing, dude. You don't put anything past him. He just signed Riley Pettijohn out of Texas and TJ Alford out of Florida last year and kept him in the class. So I'm not putting it past him, but it's going to be a hard one to get.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Melo. Appreciate you, brother. Make sure you guys follow the Buckeye Boys, subscribe to them. Ravia Tube, thanks for the 10. I don't see any obvious weaknesses with this team. QB is going to be good. Wide receivers, O-line, and running back are going to be very good or elite. Defense is going to be elite. What am I missing? The entire season comes down to Julian Sain. If Julian Sain can be what we need him to be, which is, a first-round type quarterback, all Big Ten level quarterback, then we're going to win it all. And if he's not, then we're not. So, again, we've got the best receiver group, the best tight end group. I put our running backs up against anybody. Our offensive line is talented, deep, veteran. The defense is going to be nasty. Comes out of the quarterback. Julian Sain is he's the most important player in college football this year. As much as JJ's great and Caleb's great, we need elite quarterback play. And he got to see Will Howard have the best season in Ohio State history last year. The dude was nails. So he's seen what it looks like, what it takes, and he was riding shotgun along the ride for Will, who was an impeccable leader and just a monster on the field, and a great asset in the meeting room, the film room, practice field, work habits, like all that. So it all comes down to Julian Sain. Devin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, people are going to say I got my scarlet glasses on, but here I go. Best offensive line room in the country, best tight end room in the country, best wide receiver room in the country, best linebacker room in the country, best safeties room in the country, best cornerback room in the country. The next question, the questions are the defensive line, quarterback, and a little bit of the running back. Very confident there. Bo Jackson and CJ out of West Virginia. I'm just not stamping them as the best running back room in the nation, but that doesn't mean they're not elite. But defensive line is the question. Depth mainly are starters, but I'm very confident there. But no, Kirk, hit the nail on the head, dude. What's Julian Sain going to do, man? We legit have serious arguments for having a lot of the best position, the groups in the country. Like those names the groups I just listed, it's like you got a pretty good argument there. You can't really say I got scarlet glasses on. There's an argument to be had with those groups there. I only left 3 groups off. So, we're a favorite to win the Natty next year for a reason.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. All right, Dev, great hour. Appreciate you, brother. Pinch hitting for Nevada. Nevada should be back tomorrow. His daughter had an incredible game. Got the win today, so they're going out to dinner. So family time first. So, Devin, I appreciate you stepping in. Any final thoughts?
No, man. Appreciate it, man. Love being here on Scoop, man. This is where it all started for me, man. Kirk gave me that wrench, dude, and ever since then I've been rolling, baby. So Kirk's like family to me. Scoop's like family to me. Love them to death. Great people, man. Talk to the parents. A lot of people love this channel. Love these guys as people, as humans. Get to know them, man. Just amazing people. I can't say enough good words about Scoop and what they do for Buckeye Nation and what they do behind the scenes for Buckeye Nation. People don't even get to see. It's really, really cool, man. So shout out everybody in the chat, dude, for watching. My show's on in 25 minutes, so I got to go over there and do that now. But this is a blast, man. I always come on here. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, and for those of you guys that have not followed Buckeye Boys, it's Buckeye Boy with a Z, Buckeye Boys. They're going to be on shortly, so make sure you head over there and check out Dev and Mello. I know a lot of you guys do. Steely, leading the way as always, leading the Buckeye Scoop family horde over to become part of the Buckeye Boys horde. You know, so
The
I
horde.
appreciate the horde. I know it's like the Mongolian horde, baby. It's terrifying. It's the best. So, all right, brother, I appreciate you. And to wrap this thing up, as always, if you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. Again, I appreciate you guys being a huge part of the show. As always, you guys are the absolute best. Thanks for the chat being lit, as always. Thank you to our moderators and all of you guys. Again, show doesn't go without you guys, so I'm always grateful for you guys. Very appreciative of you guys. If you're going to help us out in a humongous way, type on the podcast app on your iPhone or on your iPad, type in Buckeye Scoop, click follow, and you'll get all the most recent episodes of our podcast. Again, that's a huge thing we're trying to grow, and you guys have been helping us out in a big way, so thank you for that. And so with that being said, thank you so much, Buckeye Nation, and thank you, Scoop family. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow night, 7:10. We'll be ready to go. You guys have a great night. Go Bucks.